our budget priorities need to be. So we thank you all very much for your feedback during that meeting. It was very valuable to us so that as we were starting to put our budgets together, knowing where your priorities are is very helpful to us. And we will continue to work on the strategic plan and getting that updated and making some of those changes and presenting that to you as the final budget document. So then that takes us to May 10th, which is down there at the bottom. We did a presentation where we reviewed our revenues and expenditures with Marcella. And then that brings us to today, where we're going to do our department updates. So each department is going to let you know what they did in 2019-2020 FY, and then let you know what we've been up to in 2020-21. And then we'll also let you know what our plans are, what we're asking for in 21-2022. So we'll do, I think this evening we have HR, community development and GIS, finance, and IT and public works. And then on June 28th, we will have our public safety departments do their department updates. Our fire chief thought he needed to go on vacation, which we think is very much well-deserved in his case and giving him a break. So I want to go ahead and put the police and fire together on June 28th. We will again reconvene then on July 12th to give you guys an overview of our capital budget. So as you know, we have our operations and then we have our capital budget. So that's anything that's over $5,000 and also has over 1 year of life. So this is where we will talk about any projects that we want to do. If there's any capital improvement projects, stormwater projects, we'll talk about our annual street maintenance plan that we have in there, as well as any vehicle purchases or any IT equipment that may need to be purchased. We'll talk about all that during the capital discussion. Then on July 28th, we will dive into the personnel budget. So this is something that HR and finance have been working very diligently on. One of the goals when city did the salary adjustments and implemented the performance evaluation plans was to make sure that we are not falling behind as what we are offering our employees in the market, so that we would remain competitive with our competitors in Warrensburg, but also with our competitors in other cities. We hate to see if we have someone who is a great street maintenance worker, but he's offered a higher position to go to another city, or he's offered another position to go work for another business here in town because they're willing to pay a couple dollars more per hour than we can. So we want to make sure that we are maintaining competitive. And the goal when the salary adjustments were done in 2018 was to get us to the 50th percentile and then maintain the 50th percentile if we could. So HR and finance have been working very diligently on figuring out what that percentage is for those salary adjustments. We're having conversations with Austin Peters, who that was the group that did our salary study back in 2018. And then we're comparing ourselves to similar cities from the Mid-America Regional Council, as well as looking at other cities that we used in the Austin Peters study. So they looked at cities like Pittsburgh, Kansas, which is about 18,000. They also have a university there. So we kind of think that they're similar to us and we should be paying about the same. One of the conversations that we are taking a deep dive into and looking into is what are we going to do with our public safety salary ranges? We know that we are struggling, not just in Warrensburg, not just in Missouri, but nationwide with recruitment of police officers and retention of police officers, as well as recruitment and retention of firefighters. There is, so I kind of look at, when I was explaining this to Greg, I was like, kind of looking at it like a CPI, the Consumer Price Index, right? We take a basket of goods and we have lots of different things in there, and some things are increasing at a faster rate, at a price that's a faster rate, where, so you have a gallon of gas and it's going up much faster than, say, a box of cereal. So what kind of looking at if we need to maybe increase our salary ranges for our public safety positions a little bit more than we do other positions in the city. So we are trying to dive into that, do lots of research so that we can come back to you all with a solid recommendation. What we heard from the strategic plan update was that that fifth goal for us, that employee retention and morale, we all heard very loud and clear that that was important to City Council. So so then we will come back on August 9th. That's when we will really start rolling all these pieces together. We'll start rolling the strategic plan, those priorities together. We'll start looking at, we'll have a better idea of what our revenues are. We should have the assessment coming in towards the end of July. We'll have more information with that sales tax and see how that's coming in. So we'll be able to have a better estimate of what our revenues will be. We will continue to look at our department budgets and we'll know what our personnel budget needs to be and seeing how we can roll back in some areas, if there's some projects that we can postpone or if there are, some certain capital improvements that we need to pull back on so that we can get that right balance of what we're doing with the personnel, capital, operations, but also making sure that we're staying in line with our revenues. So that final budget recommendation will be on August 9th. We will do a first reading then on August 23rd. And we will hopefully do a second reading on September 13th. That gives us a couple of weeks in there if we need to have a special meeting, if there's still some changes that we need to make to the budget, but ultimately we have to have it turned in by the end of September. So, are there any questions about the budget timeline?
Where's the 3.7 million plug in at?
So the 3.7 million, we kind of hit the pause button on that, the American Rescue Plan Act, just because we really dove into the raised grant application. The state of Missouri has not yet requested their drawdown, and since we have to get our money as a pass through from Missouri, we're kind of in limbo, and so just hit the pause button on that. Been having conversations amongst ourselves, still kind of tossing around ideas on how we want to implement those funds. We had that meeting where we were talking about the internal needs versus the external needs, where we wanted to prioritize. We know we only have 4 areas that we can spend it in. So that will, I believe that we amended our 2021 budget, 2021 budget to include half of that. And then we will include that in our 2022 budget as well, unless we kind of, as we get into it, because we don't have to spend those funds until 2024. So there might be a chance that we don't include that until.
We'll have to recognize the revenue when we receive it.
Yeah.
And so the revenue may come in, but you won't see any expenses associated with that until we develop that plan.
And it'll be its own separate fund line item like we've done in the past with several of them. Okay.
All right, well, without further ado, we will dive into our budgets updates for departments then. Greg, I think you're first.
Oh, wow, we start out with the biggest budget first, huh?
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you for the council, or afternoon, I guess it is. So we'll go ahead and move that forward. Oops, I did it too fast, evidently. Oop, there's one missing, one slide missing. So the basic difference between the 2019 and 2020, the 2020-21 budget and the 21-22 budget is as follows. That slide did not get in there, and I apologize for that. But the total budget for 2019 and 2020 was $175,574.20. In 2020 and 2021, it was $213,310. And then in 21-22, it's $195,839. The primary difference between the 2019 and the 2020 budget in terms of human resources comes in 2 areas. First, basically in the wages and insurance funds for approximately $16,736 for the human resources assistant position for a full year instead of a half year. She was hired at 7/1 of 2019, so half of her salary was in 2019, 2020, but it was needing to increase that to a full year in the 2021 budget. And so that's the difference in the increase, part of the increase from the 175 to the 213, 310. The second from the fund is the non-categorized item, because we did have to amend the budget in the 2020, 2021 year for the 21,000 to be added for the city manager search contract with GovHR USA. So those are basically the two reasons for that increase from the 2019 and 2020 area there. So any questions on the increase in those from those 2 years? Pretty straightforward. So let's go ahead and talk about resources here this year. First, this gives me kind of an opportunity to tell you where some of our budget items come from. So first of all, if we don't count the wages and insurance and those types of things, and we get down to those line items not associated with that, you're talking about employment development. What's involved in employment development? Well, you heard Danielle talk about MARC, or the Mid-America Regional Council subscriber fees. That's the outfit that we utilize with the Austin Peters group when we did that study for the cities that are in Missouri that participate in that. They load their wage data in there, and so do we, so that we can go back to that group and we can do studies based upon those cities as to the different job titles that each of those cities have, so that we can basically do a little bit of research as to what those cities are. So not all of the 20 cities that were involved in our Austin Peters study are subscribers to the Mid-America Regional Council, but those that are, I can easily get out and look at varying positions and find out what they're paying for those different positions today and do some of those studies. So it does help me to be able to get in there and do some research. Other employment training for me is the department head and supervisories. So I'll be letting you know we did increase that line item this year because we'd like to provide some additional training to managers and supervisors, such as FMLA training, performance evaluation, conflict management, those types of things in that area. So we did increase that line item just a little bit. Office supplies, again, that's general supplies that we have, hanging file folders, manila folders, all that kind of stuff. But the important part there is we do have to do ACA reports that go out each year, just like W-2s to individuals. So that goes into office supplies, and we order those from Encode. Another part is program supplies. Program supplies includes employee meals and recognition that we do on a quarterly basis. So those meals that we have, maybe out in the bay in the fire station or out at the public works, the food and recognition that we do comes out of that budget. Also, the annual recognition gift cards and pins and things that we do for the employees comes out of that budget each year, as well as the popularity of the holiday hams and turkeys, better known as the Parsons Ham and Turkey event.
Who's gonna do that now?
Yeah, what are we gonna do? He's not here. We gotta find somebody else to take that over. But that all comes out of that program supplies area. Software for me at Human Resources is basically the Insperity Perform Smart annual fee. That's our performance evaluation system that we utilize here at the city to do performance evaluations with. The software falls under that category there. There is a food line item that you see under there for meetings. I did increase that just a little bit this year. We do provide food for different meetings, but also this year we may be having 2 recruitment receptions both the city manager as well as a fire chief. And so any of the food that's associated with those would come out of that line item. The utility or telephone is basically the cell phone allowance for human resources. The consulting services is another line item. We do employee safety training, and we have been utilizing the Summit Safety Group for the quarterly meeting. We did utilize them. We were doing a monthly charge, but we've gone to quarterly meetings the last couple of years. And we utilize a gentleman that comes down from Summit Safety Group to help us with our safety. Also, that fee gives us access to their entire library and audio visual training items, so that if we want to do training on any safety topic, we've got access to their entire database with that fee. So that comes out of that consulting services area. Legal services, I do budget a line item there for any employment or HR related legal fees. Contractual, non-categorized, that includes our EAP or Employment Assistance Program that we have for employees. Any employee screening services that we do, which could be the new employee drug testing and those types of things come into there. Our work comp fees come out of there, as well as talks, which TLX is also used to be Equifax. So we utilize Equifax for any of our unemployment related claims that come our way, and they provide individuals that help walk us through those and either pay those or help us challenge those, whichever the case may be. That line item also is any COBRA related fees or any flex spending account fees that we are required to pay for those that are involved in those accounts. Travel, you will see travel, room, and expenses for a conference. My SHRM conference last year was virtual, so all we needed to pay for was the fee for the conference itself. We were able to do it virtually, and that's how I get my continuing education credits in order to keep my SHRM CP certification. This year they are going back to an actual conference, and so there is some extra money in there for room and board. Other schools and seminars, that's where the above one is just where the room and board comes out. The SHRM conference, CPCU fee, work comp annual meeting, any of those that have fees associated with them for registration come out of that line item. Dues and memberships. I am a member of the Society for Human Resource Management, as well as the CPCU organization, which is the Chartered Property Casualty Underwriter, which I believe that's important as I help with the insurance stuff here with the city. Basically, then all I want to tell you is the difference between last year's amended budget and this year fall in these areas here. The employment development increased $610 for department head and supervisor training programs, as we talked about. Office supplies did decrease $120 due to, we were able to recycle a lot of supplies from the storage room cleanup and reorganization that Kathy's been working so hard on. So a lot of hanging file folders and manila folders we were actually able to recycle and use and not have to purchase some of those items, as well as boxes and things like that to take some of those things and get them ready for the shredding truck when they get here. Software did increase $500 due to increased fees for the performance evaluation system. So Xperity actually raised their fee $500. So instead of $5,000, it's $5,500 this year. The food, we did increase it $250 due to those recruitment receptions that we talked about. And then the contractual non-categorized did decrease $21,000 due to there won't be a search process in the 22 year because we put that in this year. That's the difference there. The travel for room and board did increase $1,050, and that's simply for the room cost of the conference. The meals are provided in those registration fees that we pay for. Dues and memberships did increase $100 as assured dues increased $100 from last year to this year. So that's in a nutshell a real quick difference between where the money was spent in 2020, 2021, and what we would like to have in 21 and 22. Any question? All right.
Thank you very much.
You are correct to the clip.
I'm sorry.
In fiscal year 20, the city, this is the year that the city was impacted initially with COVID, and early on, the city council removed the match requirement for the downtown facade grants. So we had one project up in the top left corner, Thompson's GameStop. They had already applied for a facade grant, and they did provide the match money on that. So that grant was the 50-50 match. The others that you see there are 5 that came through. We think largely because the match requirement was removed for that year, and so the grant could be $1,000 and the city would pay $1,000. So we had 2 signs, the Myers Market and the MKT. And then we had Central Wrestling, which did a window and paint project. And then Salon Vogue did a new door and moved a gas meter. And then maybe it was electric. I'm not sure what kind of meter it was. And then Art Ozias did the repainting there at Java Junction. So highlight those for fiscal year 20. We did do some other work. Largely, we reconfigured the property maintenance code workflow within Intergov, instituted remote inspections as needed for COVID. And right before COVID hit, we updated the ADA transition plan here through City Council. That was work that your building official, Brett Penrose, had done through the previous summer and fall. We had to cut short our census preparations. With Census Day coming in April 1 of 2020, I still anticipate September of this year will be about the first data products that you will see roll out from that count. Our permit clerk was certified as a permit tech through the ICC Code Council, and we did a lot of our bread and butter work of permitting projects and doing plan reviews. The Historic Preservation Commission falls under us, and the city planner does a lot of work with them. That was the year that they started their work in the identifying the resources and the study area for the Grover Street historic property. I'll read that exactly. The Grover and Broad Street survey. So that was not a National Register listing project. That was just a survey project, and the commission started that work and did a lot of the field work over the winter and through the COVID months because it was outdoors and they were doing it as individuals and not as a group. Within the GIS world, we got a new aerial photo in April of 2020. It was flown and we received it later that summer. And that has been a great resource for staff. Now we have a 2015 photo and a 2020 photo. And when you toggle between the two, you can often see what people are doing with their land. So when they say, oh, it's always been a gravel driveway, we now can verify that. That maybe it got a little bigger. So that's been a useful tool, and that is the year that we started. So we, in the fall of 19, moved our GIS person from half-time to full-time in that position, and so we started to identify how we could scale that program up across other departments. And then we did our regular work of doing planning and zoning, and conditional use permits and rezoning and annexations, subdivision plats, property maintenance code inspections, business license inspections, liquor license inspections, plan reviews, issuing building permits, nuisance inspections. You have to see there the amount of workload that we do in those areas. That is for a calendar year, not for fiscal year. So 2021, the current year, fiscal year 21, far and away the biggest expense within community development is the personnel costs. We filled 2 positions in fiscal 21. They've always been filled, authorized for several years now, but you have 2 staff people in them. Up in the top there, you have Jane Haven, our nuisance code inspector. Down on the bottom, you have property maintenance code inspector Joe Clifford. Both of them started in August, and so we trained them up over the fall. So Jane, in January, started a enforcement of dumpster enclosures for multifamily projects. There had been a big effort in 1998 to get a lot of those built, and they had largely reached the end of their lifespan. So she had inventoried them all and ranked them and has been working on getting them rebuilt or rehabbed in the last several months. And I feel like we've spent a lot of time on the phone with Internet this year. I have. We got that software in 2017. It gets annual updates like most software does, but they forgot to tell us that. And so last fall, we discovered that on our own and proceeded to update it. And then coming out of that, moved it into a Tyler hosted environment and off of our servers here locally. More to come on that in fiscal 22. And then we did update several ordinances, home occupations, you'll recall, shooting, archery, weapons ranges, allowing art murals. We updated signs in residential districts. And I didn't get it on here, but we also did our nuisance and vegetation updates. Historic preservation was busy this past year, primarily working on their survey. And then they also did a big effort with Preservation Month this last May with the Warrensburg Main Street. GIS, in the fall, you authorized, and in January, we purchased the Esri Enterprise system. This is the system that allows us to scale it up. So right now, your GIS system has been on one workstation, and then we pay a third party, Midland GIS, to host your online presence that you see the zoning map on the website. First, we scaled up our system and the number of users we can have, so the number of desktops it can be on. Then we have just entered in May a contract with ProWest to deploy that on our local servers, on a GIS server. Probably more than one, I don't know the details. And then by the end of the year, oh, sorry, I'm getting into next year. Hold that thought. Yes, so, and mostly Roma works with my staff, does some work with fire, he's done some work with COVID, and he's been working with public works stormwater. So in the top there, that is your new stormwater layer within the new enterprise system. And the bottom is the zoning map in the enterprise system. Here's where we are year to date on our regular day in, day out work. Interestingly, they're all in the same order as the first slide, which was numerical order. I thought that was interesting that the trend is following from one year to the next at the same level. So looking forward, how we're going to spend what we're asking for in the next year's budget. Some of these are things we will be working on that don't have a financial cost to them, but I put them in here so you know. We will be looking at whether or not there are benefits to having a code enforcement docket, a certain day dedicated to code enforcement cases within municipal court. It's taking a lot of staff time to be here every week for court. And in addition, that type of case moves through court at a much different rate than other types of cases. And so there may be benefits to the judge as well as to my staff to have two different dockets or have a different docket for us. We also will be exploring the use of foreclosure software. We've had companies approach us that could help us identify contacts for properties that have been foreclosed on, that have moved from bank to bank to bank. We often have a hard time, if it's not a bank with a local presence, and usually it is not, it can be very hard to get a person on the phone. We spend a lot of time looking for owners. So we have started exploring that. We'll continue that in the next year. There was a housing task force. Carroll started probably 18 months or more ago. And one of the discussions in that was that there were probably educational and advocacy type of information we could provide at no cost on our website. And so we'll look at trying to do that in the next year. That's just a simple matter of getting information collected and getting it on the website. There's not a real cost to us for doing that. So Joe will work on that in the coming year. InterGov has a reliance on Silverlight, which is disappearing in October, and Internet Explorer, which is disappearing in June of 2022. So everything we do will have a new interface come October, and all the users have to learn it. So that's exciting, and they're ready. So the top picture, what we do now, and the bottom is what we're going to. The data, the workflow, all that's the same. It's just literally where it is on your screen and how you view it. But it will be a big change. I started using it last Monday. It'll be a big change. Let's see. And then this is from your exploring housing options, quality, affordability. All of those things are discussions that you've had centered around your strategic plan, and we'll continue to be a part of those in the next year. Historic Preservation Commission will be coming at you in the next month. You have a question?
I do. Can you go back, please? On the methods of housing, quality, affordability, and option, what are you thinking on exploring? Like, we had a rental task force, but we delayed it and COVID stuff. So what are we thinking?
Well, by housing options, I mean different types of housing. So, attached, townhouse, maintenance-free, the range of options is what I mean by options. Quality and affordability, I think, are more obvious. Danielle and I have talked some. There were some things. There was I don't remember which, but a suburban McKinney study was doing a study they were looking at. We were going to try to take a look at it as well. I know Whiteman Area Leadership Council has got their housing study. That's an actual study going. So I can't tell you exactly what we're going to do there yet, but I think there's some educating and then just conversations to have and see. It's going to be hard to do. Even the things I would have told you we might do a year ago are so different right now just because of lumber prices.
Well, and I understand the city is a very small part of cost, and I don't want to get into complex supplemental or anything, but I just am very curious because it's something that there's a fairly substantial social demographic that needs better rental, needs better on the other side. So I don't know. I'm just curious what we can do. That's all. Thank you.
Historic Preservation will be coming in soon asking for permission to apply for a state historic preservation grant. With I think it'll be in the neighborhood of a $30,000 grant with a 60-40 match on it. That will have, if awarded, then they would hire a consultant to do a preservation plan for them, which would help guide their work and efforts over the coming years. Give them a work plan essentially. Within GIS, the big one here is starting in October, we will be breaking up with Midland GIS. And so what you see on our website right now as the interface, the integrity screen that you go to see the map, that will change. And we will, they will not be hosting for us. We will host that ourselves. It'll start to look more like what you've seen here tonight. And we will just have a service link with Midland to bring in the county layers and county information into it. So the data will be the same, but how it looks and how you access it will change. If you're a heavy user of it, I started using this last Monday as well. It has all the same features. It's just in a different place. So that will happen so that we are largely self-sufficient in GIS by the end of 2021. That's what happened. Any other questions?
Thank you very much.
So I have one to start with. This is not in the budget at all this year, and it won't be for the next couple of years, but things to start thinking about. So future capital needs. Obviously, our parking lots need a lot of work. I've already started the conversation with Danielle about doing some seal coats at the community center, NASIF, and then we really need to look at just redoing Cape Hollow. The ABC building, it's really at the end of its useful life. We've also had conversations about what that looks like in the future. It probably needs to be torn down. We need to look at something new. NASIF Aquatic Center, unfortunately, as you know, it was renovated in 2009. The upper deck was, the lower deck was not touched except for the bathhouse. We have seen a lot of shifting in the concrete. I don't know if you've been over there recently, but especially with this last really cold winter, where the concrete drains are, it's bad shifted. We've got mats over it to prevent people from tripping, but we need to start looking at addressing the deck. And that wasn't renovated in 2009. And just fun fact, as you'll remember, the debt payment on that is about $180,000 a year until 2033. We need to update playgrounds, and I'll go through that here in just a second. The digital sign, that's more of a want than a need, but it is something. We're in a really busy intersection. We'd really like to get that updated. The one we have, we've tried to piece everything together to fix it, and it's also beyond its useful life. Soccer field renovation, that's part of the West Park Master Plan, but something that's really important to us. We'd like to add some lights and then a permanent restroom. Hale Lake Road Trail connection. Harold and I had started this conversation with UCM prior to him leaving and COVID hitting. But if you've been over on Hale Lake Road on the south side of Lions Lake, it's very busy. And if you're trying to continue to walk the trail, it's really not safe. And so that land south of Lions Lake is actually UCM's. And so we had started the process of them letting us put a trail on that. That would be pretty cost prohibitive right now, but we started that conversation. Lions Lake dredging, the northeast corner of Lions Lake, you'll notice it's starting to silt in. We need to dredge it. We had a big rain event last year, completely flooded over the dock at Lions Lake. We need to get that dredged so we have more rainwater capacity. And it also just, it really looks bad. DD trail resurfacing. This is something I haven't talked to Danielle about yet, but we need to start looking at maybe a seal coat on that as well. It's looking pretty rough, and we've got some areas we need to look at fixing. And then permanent restrooms at Hawthorne Park. That's a really busy park. I live over there. It's always busy. We are very lucky. D&M Plumbing donates the porta potties in all the parks, so we don't pay for anything. But I'd really like to get a permanent restroom out there.
A quick question.
Yeah.
On Lions Lake, the way it's silting, I believe in one of our meetings, some point in the last 2 years, they had discussed about creating like a pool, like a concrete retaining pool for the water when it first comes in, to give it a chance to silt out in one spot, so it'd be easier to clean. Is that what we're thinking, like doing that and dredge it at the same time, or is it just dredge it and then hope we can get that put in before we have to dredge it again?
I think immediately needs to be dredged, but we could talk about that wall. A lot of the silt comes from Lake Sena and the overflow.
You know what I'm talking about though, right? Like,
Yeah,
okay,
where it would
fine.
go before that, where the.
Right.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Yep. So these are the ages of our playgrounds. You can see our oldest playground is at Mar Park and it's 30 years old this year. And then our newest one, of course, is the inclusive playground, which was built in 2018. So this is really important and needs to be a priority. I want every park that we renovate moving forward to be an inclusive park. I don't want to just have one, I want to have 8. But these are starting to become older, we need to start addressing these. Minimum wage, I won't harp on this too much, you guys know, minimum wage has gone up about 85 cents each year since 2018. This has been a really big impact to our budget in each division. So fitness attendants or front desk, it's about $10,000 per group of staff. And so to absorb that over this short amount of time has been really difficult. So we've been looking at ways to absorb that. Okay, so I briefly want to go back for 2020, what we did with last year's budget, this year's budget, and what we're going to do in the future. So let me look at a little one. The first one, we revamped room 3. That's come a long way since I've been here. You probably remember it from a couple years ago. We've added the TV, we've made it more functional for Zoom meetings, and it does have plugins for your computer to be able to do HDMI. We added a sound system and speakers in multi A, B, and C. Previously, those were actually in room E, which is that middle room. We've put them all in C, and we have a really easy cabinet to use, so anyone who rents it, they're able to just control everything from C. We added e-gaming. This was really big. We got 4 Nintendo Switches. Rec staff have really liked programming this, and a really cool consequence that we didn't know would happen. We've had some kids that have participated that don't participate in our other sports, whether it's because they don't feel comfortable or they're not able to. So this gave them an outlet to be included and have just a really cool experience with our staff in kind of a sports setting. We changed the soccer fields and added a flag football field. So the soccer fields needed a revamp. They weren't laid out very well. We changed the field size a couple years previously. And so the guys were really gracious and they changed everything. And then we also added an additional flag football field. So if you don't know, we play flag football on the baseball fields because it's fall and we need the lights. So we were just playing at Cape Hollow, Rotary, and Jerry Rich, but we have 3 age divisions. We found parents really like that they know if I always play on Tuesdays at Cape Hollow, Rotary. So we added an additional flag football field at West Park 1, and that's worked out really nicely. We also rejoined the Shippy League. So you may remember the year before I got here, we'd gotten out of the Shippy League and we tried playing with a rec league and a competitive league with a couple of other outside teams. That didn't really work, so we rejoined. Of course, then COVID hit. We didn't actually get to play last year, but we are playing with them this year and I think it's going really well. We also completed the LED light installation at the community center. I know we talked about this when we did the budget tours and I gave you the spreadsheet with how much money we've saved. That's been a really good investment for us and we're continuing to do that in all of the parks. We also, when COVID, when we were closed for 3 months, we repainted the entire gym, which it really needed a coat and it probably needs to be repainted again. So we've been very busy, but we added our logo in the middle. Let's see. We also updated the security cameras. So when I first got here, we only had 12 security cameras, which is crazy because our building is huge. Last year, with Gary's help, he helped us write an RFP. We now have 30 cameras. And we're actually, you'll see, we're looking to add a few more, but that's been really great. PD has access to it so they can review footage at any time. So if something was happening, that's an added aspect of safety for them.
Have the kids figured out all the blind spots yet?
Maybe, but they also know we have cameras now, so it's really good. We replaced the fire panel at the community center. That was original to the building, and that was quite the undertaking. I think that we're working on replacing some here now because of that, but we're glad we got that done. We replaced the remaining 3 flat roofs. You'll remember we have 7 flat roofs on the building, and then of course the green metal roof. So we did the last 3 last year, and we did the other 4 the year before. One of the things that was really nice when we were closed, we could never get the spa down for long enough to fix it. There were a lot of missing tiles, and you remember from our tour, those tiles are about 1 inch by 1 inch, they're very small. And so we were able to completely drain the spot, and Jeff put all the tiles in, replaced them, and regrouted it, and it looks really nice. It was nice we had that time to do it. And we had some innovative programming during COVID. It really stunk because we had to cancel a lot of things for the spring. But we had some bird houses and squirrel little picnic tables that were kits. And so you could purchase them and then you could build them on your own. And then we also, the mother-daughter tea was getting ready to happen. And so Alex just created little to-go party bags, and then she delivered them to the parents, and those were really well received. One of the things we also worked on was we partnered with the senior center, and we talked about this on our tour with Melissa, but they helped us replace some of the chairs in the multi-purpose rooms, A, B, and C. And that was really important because the seniors prior to COVID were in the rooms 5 days a week from 8 to 3, so they have to sit on the chairs and had to like them. But we were really grateful for their partnership in that all the tables and chairs previous to us purchasing new were original to the building. And so everything that was still usable is now at the ABC building. The next thing, we're gonna move on to 2021. So this year, really good. We replaced the locker room floors at the beginning of this year. You may remember that was sort of a debacle because there was some issues with curing when the building was built. But we were really grateful. It's now replaced. It looks really nice. We're hoping it's gonna last us another 20 to 25 years. We replaced the gym curtain, which was not something we had anticipated on doing. But you remember, again, due to age, it was original to the building. The grommets had broken due to the wear, and so it ripped the curtain, and so we replaced that. We've changed everything now in the gym to a black color scheme, so the curtain is black. We also replaced the gym pads, the wall pads. Those were original to the building. They were starting to rip. They looked really bad. We need to replace those anyway, so we did that last year. And then we've also started to repaint all the windows and door frames, the metal ones. They were green. They're all the forest green. So we're changing those to black as well. So everything on the first floor is done with those. And then we're working with Public Works. We've talked about this a little bit, but there is the drain pipe that goes underneath the entrance to Cape Hollow, and that is starting to fail. And so we are going to, in July, mid-July, between baseball and flag football, we're going to replace that. And then we're also going to asphalt the entrance because that entrance is crumbling and really needs to be replaced. And we're really grateful because they're gonna do all the work. We just have to pay for it. So this applies. We are still working on the slide pump replacement at WCC. It has taken a little bit because of the rain. They haven't been able to get a crane back there to get that replaced. But all of the pumps in that pump house are original to the building. So this was something we kind of budgeted for, although we didn't plan for it to be this year. I'm also looking to add a few security cameras. I budgeted for more this year, knowing that there was always more we wanted to add. I'd like to do a couple more to the outside of the building. And then now that we've used it for about 6 months, there's some blind spots that I would like when I'm looking at it. And so we're gonna get those added here before the end of the fiscal year. Okay. Something that's not new, but I wanted to touch on is our summer food service program grant. So we've always had this, we've just changed it a little bit. We used to, before, we would get reimbursed for lunch and snack. This year we decided to do breakfast and lunch that we get reimbursed through. It's really awesome because this is how we feed our camp kids in the summer, but anyone who's under 18 can come get a free meal. And we've had quite a few families come do so. So it's a really good service for our community. But we do give our camp kids snack too. We just take it out of our budget. And then we started to replace NASA flights with LED. Prior to the beginning of the season, we had a couple of, it's like the parking lot style lights out in the NASA deck area have started to go out. So we replaced those with LED. I applied for the Hawthorne Park. As you remember, the safety surfacing out there is starting to fail. So I applied for the scrap tire grant through DNR. I've not heard back yet, but I'm hoping that will be an expense in this year's budget. And then we have added Wi-Fi access points in the meeting rooms, which has been really helpful because before, if you needed to meet down in the meeting rooms, we didn't really have access. Staff, we were just using the senior center's Wi-Fi. You really can only use it upstairs. Okay, moving on to fiscal year 2022. A big thing that I would like to add back in and something we cut because of COVID and cost and things changing is the activity guide. That's about $21,000 a year plus our part-time marketing staff costs. That's a big undertaking, but I really think it's valuable not only for us as staff. I look through my old ones at least once a day, and staff do too, but I know our customers do and keep them on their table. New recreation software. We've been talking about this since I got here. We currently use ActiveNet. It's really not very robust and does not do what we need it to do. And so we are looking at a couple of other software choices. We've scheduled 3 demos for the beginning of July, and we're gonna have finance and IT sit in with us because they have to be able to use the software as well. And then I should have caveated 2022 with, I still have about $300,000 to cut from this budget. And that's also based on what the revenues are. Marcel and I have been working on that. And they may come in a little higher for sales and use tax projections, so that may help. But so some of this may get cut, but I did want to bring it up because it's really important things we need to start thinking about as well. We need to start thinking about the Nassau Lazy River and splash pad paint job that's starting to chip off, needs to be replaced. It was done probably about 8 years ago, and it's pretty pricey. It's probably about $45,000. We also need to start thinking about tennis court resurfacing. This is something I haven't talked to Keith yet, but I'd like to talk about partnering with the school with this because they're the ones who use the tennis courts truly the most. They have the boys and girls tennis teams out there every season. And then we do need a new roof on the park maintenance shop. So that is a cost we need to start looking at. And then we've talked about this a couple of times in park board recently, the Cape Hollow Inclusive Park restroom. We know we need something better out there. It's not inclusive, it's not working. 2 meetings ago, we had UCM civil engineering students come and they gave us basically a price. This was their end of year project for what it would cost to get a whole new restroom. That's not feasible. It's over $400,000. So we started Bob Crum, who's the Wills board president. He also is the retired public works director from here. And so he kind of thought of some different things for us to look at. We're looking at just changing the wall and where the toilets are at, basically. I'm really confident. We have a new park operations superintendent, Kevin Courtright. He's really awesome. He is confident he can do the work in-house. We're going to try and get it done this year when we did the pipe replacement at Cape Hollow, but I don't think that's enough time, and we're short-staffed in park maintenance. So he had asked if we could move it to the next fiscal year, and he's going to try and do it in the winter when we're slow. But he thinks he can do all that work in-house, so that'll save us some money too. And then something big we need to do, we need to completely refinish the gym floor. We did it a couple of years ago where we repainted the lines. We do refinish it every year. We just replace the top coat, but it's to the point where we need to now sand down to the wood, repaint the lines and refinish it. That will take a little bit longer. It's about 2 weeks. But if we do get the software replaced, when we do our normal maintenance days, it's the first Monday through Wednesday in December. We actually will need to do a whole week because we can't be up and running if we're completely changing to new software. So I'd like to do gym floor refinishing then. We also have been looking at the carpet in the hallways in the community center and replacing it. I don't know if you've been in there recently. It's also original to the building. Probably needs to start looking at being replaced. Something big for me in this budget is staff development. We pretty much cut all staff development this last year. We did some online trainings through NRPA and NPRA, but I really want to make sure we're focusing on certifications and going to conferences because I want to retain my staff, and they really enjoy doing those things and learning. One thing that we've been talking about with camp is the arts and crafts room revamp. We use arts and crafts room as our home base for the camp kids every day. And so we'd like to change it a little bit, maybe paint it, make it a little more fun, but more functional for our camp. And then we also need to start looking at another vehicle. We have a Ford Taurus that PD graciously gave us several years ago. However, it's getting older. We can't really drive it out of town and it's not big enough. When we go get lunch and breakfast for our camp kiddos, it completely fills Kevin's truck bed. So it's not big enough. They need something and Brennan needs something for sports as well. New fitness equipment. Unfortunately, we're getting ready to pay off the loan in January of 2022 that purchased all the fitness equipment, most of the fitness equipment upstairs, the ellipticals, the treads, the bulk of the weights. However, the treadmills are not very good quality. We need to start looking at new ones and a better brand. And then we've got one elliptical that we already know we've got to get rid of because it's broken. Because the jaws of life had to get someone's fit out of there and it doesn't work anymore. We're gonna start looking at that. And then finally, hopefully a festival. We're really excited to start brainstorming ideas of what we can maybe do next year. And we're open to any ideas or suggestions you have.
Thank you very much.
Evening, Mayor and Council. You get to listen to me a lot. Finance is really boring. But the accomplishment.
But you're exciting, so it makes it worth it.
So some of the accomplishments that we did in fiscal year 20, and something that we've accomplished every year for a number of years is the Government Finance Officers Association Distinguished Budget Award. That is presented in our budget every year. It's something that we strive to achieve. Now for 22, the budget award has been redefined by the Officers Association. And so that's going to be a little bit of a challenge for 22, but that's something we're still going to continue to strive for, and something that I think Warrensburg has had a huge accomplishment with being able to achieve that award for a number of years. We, in our processes for fiscal year 20 and all of the cutbacks and the furloughs and everything that staff did, you know, entirely across the city was in cutting everything back that we did in an effort to increase fund balance in both 20 and actually for 21, which we'll talk about a little bit more. But that fund balance went up by a little bit as we finished up fiscal year 20 and actually started 20. And so going forward, we're going to maintain that fund balance at our goal. The facilitated all the applications for the CARES Act in 20 and 21. So that money was, you know, collected and awarded to us through the county as we finished out fiscal year 20. We also completed the implementation of the software upgrade from Encode 9 to Encode 10 for utility billing and cash collections. And I think at the time I gave huge kudos to Carroll, our collector, because he's facilitated that. And when you talk to some of the staff at Encode and see some of the comments, you know, they're using his training documents and some of those pieces on how to utilize that software quite a little bit as well. So accomplishments for 21, again, we applied for the award and we have not received notification yet on whether or not we have received that award. We typically get that in the next couple of months. It happens like right before budget is published, so it can be part of our document. We amended the budget for 21 to allow for salary increases because sales tax money has come in greater than what we had originally anticipated, and is still up, and which is really super exciting. And as Danielle mentioned in parks, you know, we're talking about some of those changes for sales and use tax. And so we're going to watch that real closely in an effort to hopefully increase that as we develop the 22 budget. We facilitated and again received more of the CARES Act money. So staff went through and did what they had was a predetermined expense. So we had to apply to the county, you know, how much we wanted to spend for that CARES Act money and what we were going to spend it on. And we were allocated 90% of that money. So staff again, and this is citywide, it's not just finance specific, it was able to accomplish that, and we were awarded that money. The request for state legislation on the public safety sales tax, unfortunately, that was not awarded to us or any of those other cities that asked for that for 21, because there was other things that our legislation wanted to piggyback on that bill that said, no, we're not going to do that. And so you'll see that come through, and we're gonna request that again as part of 22. And if you'll remember that sales tax, when we get the state approval from the legislation, then that allows us to put it on the ballot. So it's a two-step process. The state legislation has to say, yes, it's okay for Warrensburg to put it on the ballot, and then it'll be up to our residents and our citizens to vote that sales tax in. So that will not happen as far as fiscal year 22, unless the governor happens to sign that bill early enough for us to maybe get it on the August ballot. Wouldn't recommend that. I would recommend that to go on the April 23 ballot. Again, we had increased fund balance, and that's thanks to staff and the cuts and the additional increases in revenue that was afforded in 20 as we started 21. So we were super conservative in developing the 21 budget, which allowed us, again, that increase in salary staff, and because staff, made those commitments and those sacrifices in 20 to make that happen. So fund balance went up again about $145,000, which for the 21 fiscal year achieves our 50% of fund balance. Remember, fund balance is not cash balance. It's, it's for your assets and your liabilities, the difference between those two things. But that's still, if we can maintain that at 50% of expenditures, and that's operating expenditures, not capital expenditures, then we are in really good shape, and it allows us to keep our bond ratings high and do some of those things that we did as we do bond sales. So we implemented the e-billing options for utility billing. So that was part of that upgrade from Encode 9 to Encode 10. We've had several citizens that have asked for that. We don't have as many as we would like to see, so that we cut down on our printing and postage costs if we can implement more of that e-billing opportunity, and that our citizens are willing to accept that as a process. We assisted in the implementation of the software upgrade for the permitting and business licenses that Barb mentioned in her presentation. That, again, has worked with finance staff, and Chris and Carl have been very instrumental in helping with that and working through those processes. And we will continue that as we go forward with looking at cloud development and some other things on the software pieces for the financial software. So Encode does offer that, and that's some of the things that we're going to continue, that software training and the workflow efficiency, which will include some cloud-based opportunities that we're talking to IT about as we go forward in 22. We completed, I just sent out the request for proposals for annual audit services. So those requests for proposals haven't been done for several years, and it's a good idea just to get some more information from others that are available out there for audit services. And it's typically just an exercise just to make sure that we have done our due diligence and making sure that we've explored our opportunities for audit processes and services. Assisted with the election and the successful approval of $17 million worth of general obligation bonds. So that was a huge piece that we've been able to accomplish, and we will be issuing part of those bonds in August. So you will see more of that, and that those were included in the budget amendment for fiscal year 21. So as we go forward for goals for 22, we continue to do the cross training of staff and the workflow efficiencies for opportunities. So one of the goals that was set out when I was hired was to see that cross training was happening, because as we all know, life happens, and if we've got staff trained and has practiced and has the documentation to step in to somebody else's role because they are pulled out of the office for one reason or another, then that helps keep things going very efficiently. We want to participate in more training opportunities and work on professional development. So there's some opportunities for some in-house certifications, use more of our software training to learn our processes. There's some document management pieces, which we're working on trying to develop that. Also working on our time entry processes. And it gives an opportunity for a person to do some self-help. And the workflow efficiencies in those trainings to utilize our software and our document management is also something that will provide a lot of efficiencies. Again, because the Distinguished Budget Award has changed their new requirements, the application will be a challenge, and you'll see that document change. That document is supposed to be more interactive. And so it will be a completely electronic document when it's submitted to GFOA, like it was because of COVID, but one of their huge requirements is for you to be able to basically click on a table of contents and be able to go to that page, or you click on a picture and it makes the picture like a video, or it gives you some real life opportunity in that document. And one of the goals that I have is to develop the comprehensive annual financial report. So we have an annual audit report that is presented to council that we use in it, and it's very usable, it's very acceptable. And the opportunity to go to a comprehensive annual report gives you some statistics and changes the dynamics of that report a little bit. And the Government Finance Officers Association also has an award for that document that I think if we can develop that, 22 will not probably happen, but we're going to work towards that achievement to also get that award so that you've got those accomplishments going forward. And I mentioned the document management system. So we're working with IT and the rest of the departments to work on a quasi-centralized document management system. Encode offers an opportunity for financial documents. So like a staff member could scan or have received a invoice, for example, in a PDF form from the vendor when they ordered it, and so they can actually attach that to the purchase order. So we're working on training that process and implementing that piece into that, and that would save on paper storage. If it's held out there, then it's held for the period of retention, and then it can be deleted or archived even into a different section until where it's just left. We also want to maintain the investment earnings. So we all know that the economy is not really afforded much investment. It doesn't cost us very much money to borrow money. That makes sense. Doesn't cost us that much money to borrow money, but in other words, if you're not paying very much to borrow money, you're also not earning very much for the money that you have available for your investment. So we're trying to make sure that we are maintaining our investment earnings. We have seen that drop. One of the benefits that we have is the current depository agreement with Equity Bank has afforded us the opportunity to maintain an interest earnings level that is not offered by anything anywhere in any length of period of time. And so we have that affordability to us, and and for the next year until that contract expires in August of 22. And so one of the things that will be completed in the spring of 22 is the proposal for depository service. And so that is required by state law to be done every couple of years. So we can extend it, we can apply for it for 2 years, and then we can extend it for a 2-year window, and then you have to go through the exercise again to do the depository agreement. And that's required in state law. They maintain the fund balance. We've achieved that. And so now the goal is to maintain that. It gives us the opportunity to use it one time if we need to, as if cash is available to do things. So if you have a capital item, for example, that has got a useful life of say 5 years. So you can spend that down, and then you have an opportunity to rebuild that, or to maintain that. So anything that's over and above that 50% mark is something that we want to be able to utilize, especially for those one-time items. And the goal is to make sure that revenue is meeting operational costs, and then anything above and beyond that is available for capital. As well as the election to renew the house and capital sales tax. So that half-cent expires in December of 25. And sorry, it's December of 25. And so the goal is to renew that. And the big push for that is the fact that we have debt that revenue source is committed to until 29. And so the fact that we have debt that goes out further than the revenue source is afforded at the time is a big push to renew that half-cent capital improvement sales tax. And that half-cent generates enough money to do just exactly that, lots of our capital. You know, so once we can get some of that debt paid down, if we can maintain that and do more of a pay-as-you-go instead of issuing debt, or you paid that down and now it gives you the opportunity to reissue debt because you've got a huge project to do, is the reason why we want to redo that half-cent sales tax. And like I mentioned earlier, we'll request the state legislation to approve the public safety sales tax. I haven't reached out to Representative Reedy and House just yet, but that's something that as they get an opportunity to pre-file those bills in December, that I expect the other cities to ask for that as well, as the representatives to kind of take that initiative themselves. Questions?
Thank you very much.
I don't know if you all were keeping a tally every time someone mentioned Gary or Randy or IT, but they are a very busy department with only 2 folks. And so one of the things I just want to recognize and remind everyone is that as we start implementing softwares and as we increase our technology to make things easier and more efficient and to be more responsive to our constituents in other departments, that oftentimes is associated with technology and falls to IT. So while a lot of, I felt like in public works, we had to pull the plug on a lot of projects in 2020, it felt like in 2020, we added a whole lot to IT's plate, just because the nature of what we were going through with the quarantine and the working from home. So in 2019, 2020, they upgraded the hybrid exchange mail server, upgraded domain controllers. We installed fiber between City Hall and Fire Station 2, between the cemetery and the West Wastewater Treatment Plant. So you will also hear us talk about when we do our capital budget discussions that we are interested in continuing to build out the city's fiber network. So one of the what we would like to do eventually is to have a connection all the way from City Hall to the Public Works Building to the cemetery, and then that would really complete our west connection for fiber. We migrated remote access from Citrix to secure VPN. So as one of the first things that happened when I got here in February of 2020, Gary told me, he's like, yeah, our certificate with Citrix is, it's already expired. We're gonna have to get it up to speed. And we've got this agreement and we can't get the attorneys to agree on some of the points in there. So then you all know what happened in March of 2020, and we sent everyone home and we told everyone they were gonna have to work from home and do remote work. Well, Citrix is how we work from home, and how when you are sitting at home or you are not on the city's network, how you are able to log into our servers and have access, secure access to our files and to the information that we have here at City Hall. So that was a challenge. Through some brainstorming and trying to troubleshoot, we were able to identify the secure VPN with Microsoft, a product that we were already paying for. So we were actually able to eliminate our Citrix server and use something that we were already paying for and implement that. So we're very excited and so far it's been working great. Part of that process of the remote from work, with the CARES Act funding, we were able to purchase laptops for the remote worker program. So now anyone who is eligible to work from home, they're given a laptop. And we have docking stations now at our desks. So one of the things this allowed us to do is, so I previously had a laptop and a PC. So we were actually able to take some of our laptops out of offline to kind of decrease our inventory, but also and to redistribute some of our newer PCs into other areas of the city. So we've actually been able to do a bunch of upgrade some upgrades to our PC inventory. So the other thing that we did in 2020, we upgraded 5 conference rooms to support the remote meetings. So we now have video TVs that are connected like with thin client mini computers, so that we can do Zoom in all of our and most of our conference rooms, Zoom meetings. And then also, you know, we did a bunch of upgrades in this room so that we would be able to have city council meetings and be able to interact with our constituents over Zoom. They also replaced the security camera system at the community center, as Danielle mentioned. So this year, we continue to do the PC refresh. So while we brought in 50 new laptops, then we redeployed 48 other PCs into other areas. So right now, we understand this is going to be a challenge for us in the next couple of years or so, but we are currently on a 6-year replacement for all of our PCs. So right now, because we brought in 50 new, that was a little bit more replacement than what we typically had done in the past. And so we know that we'll probably have to get rid of some and start kind of working in that refresh just to make sure that we don't have too much of a burden on our IT budget when it comes time to replace 50 laptops. But we were able to, like I said, redeploy a lot of those PCs into other areas of the city as well. We worked with community development to migrate the building permit software to the cloud. We're working towards migrating our phone system to the cloud. You will hear us talk about getting things off-prem, so off premises, and into the cloud a lot more. What this allows us to do is, how Gary explains it to me, is like we're either gonna pay for it now by putting it in the cloud, or we have to pay for it later. So basically it's taking a lot of that workload off of Randy and Gary and when they are trying to do their updates, the backups of all the servers, and we're basically punting that to the people who are in charge of it. We don't have to worry about servers going down. We don't have to worry about replacing servers. So you will hear us talk a lot about pushing things to the cloud. We backed up data stored in Office 365. And then we also stood up our disaster recovery site over at Fire Station 2. So if something were to happen to this building, if it was wiped out by a tornado or if there was a fire, we would be able to replicate all of our servers and everything would get spun up over at Fire Station 2, and we would not be offline for too long. We are, everything is in place and everything is installed. We have not yet done a test. So where we would shut down everything here at City Hall, turn it on over at Fire Station 2, run it for a little while and then see if it works, make sure everything's working, and then we would turn everything off Fire Station 2 and bring it back over here. We have not done that yet. I think we all get a little nervous.
That would be a very limited test on limited.
Yeah. So we hope it never happens, but right. So for FY 2022 and for 2023, and I am really struggling with the 2 years, and it looks like I've kind of bumped that one up a little bit there. But so we will migrate the phone system, continue moving the phone system from the cloud or from on-prem to the cloud. What we're looking at is actually going to Zoom phones. They've had a lot of success. A lot of folks, they've actually been on the market for a long time. We've used Zoom to do our meetings and our virtual meetings. And then as we were looking at our current provider, which is Mitel, we were looking at some message boards and folks are not happy with their cloud service. So we've been doing more research and looking into the Zoom phone system, and we're really excited about it. And what it would basically mean is that everyone basically have a phone number that you could either have your phone on your computer or you could have an actual headset at your desk. But you can also easily forward it to your cell phone. It's like an application on your phone. So we're excited about it. We're still learning more about it and trying to figure out how we can implement that and upgrade our entire phone system here at City Hall. Then we are also looking to migrate Encode to the cloud, and then also implementing next generation antivirus software. So I might ask Gary to jump in here if we need some technical assistance in explaining this, but right now, we have to do our micro trend has to download an update to be able to identify what viruses are out there, so it doesn't learn as the new things come out there. With this next generation antivirus software, the software is constantly learning and constantly updating itself to be able to protect us from any viruses that are out there. Did I get that right?
That's also kind of tied to Greg's cyber insurance. That's one of the questions that they ask is, are we running an updated advanced type software? So I don't know if that will bring some insurance rates for our cyber insurance, but
Big very well.
and it's also, this is all monitored up in the cloud. So it's like, it's one thing with the company is constantly providing updates, and they're more real time than waiting for a compromise to happen to somebody, and then they write the patches to that and then download it the next day. So you're going to be a lot more protected to a day one type virus.
And then the one thing that I did not get on here, which I apologize for that, is we are actually looking to do an upgrade for all of our police officers, all of their computers that they have in their cars, and being able to upgrade all of those so that each officer will have his or her own laptop that will be able to plug into the car, and totally just redoing all of the equipment in the police vehicles as well in next FY. So are there any questions about the IT? Again, when you do see that final number, you will see that the IT budget does jump up quite a bit. But just please understand that a lot of that is what we do to serve our other departments as far as technology goes. Public Works. So like I mentioned before, 2020, I felt like we had to pull the plug on a lot of our projects and programs that we were planning on doing in 2020 when COVID hit and we stopped all. We didn't know what the revenues were going to come in, so we just, if we hadn't already done it, or if it wasn't already kind of in progress, then we didn't do it. However, we did complete our annual street maintenance program. So we did about 9,371 linear feet in asphalt overlay, and we did about 8,800 linear feet in the polymer overcoat. We completed our annual curb and sidewalk program. So that was about 1,300 linear feet of curb and gutter and about 2,700 square feet of sidewalk that we were able to do. When we are doing our annual street maintenance program and we are doing our annual curb and sidewalk program, if we are going in and doing an overlay, we go into and look at all the curb. And if we have crumbling curb along that street, it doesn't do us any good to mill it out and put new asphalt down if that integrity between the curb and the gutter isn't there, because water will seep under there. So we want to make sure that we have really good curb in place where we are doing those asphalt overlays. We also completed the annual sewer main lining and manhole rehabilitation plan. So we were able to do about 4,500 linear feet of main last year, and we did 49 manholes. You guys will recall that we are actually had a schedule on our manholes. And so in this current fiscal year, we did not do any manholes, and we put all of our money towards lining the mains. And also, if you will recall, we had a follow-up conversation based on some questions from City Council that we are still a long ways from getting everything lined that was required of us when we did our I&I study a few years ago. So we still have a lot of work to do as far as getting those mains lined, those clay mains lined. And then also in 2020, we upgraded the UV equipment at the West Wastewater Treatment Plant. Something else I wanted to just mention in FY 2019 and 2020, I got my teeth all messed up there. We saw 4 pretty significant retirements. So you can look up there. We lost the Director of Public Works. We lost Nancy Westbrook, who was the compliance, lab compliance tech out at the wastewater treatment plants, Larry McKenzie and Carrie Murphy. So we lost over 120 years of experience in the Public Works Department in 2020. Obviously, I filled Slim's position. We are still struggling to fill Nancy Westbrook's position. We hired someone, and that person is turning around and leaving again. Hasn't barely been in the position for a year. We have been able to backfill one of our street maintenance worker positions. But again, just struggling trying to find folks who want to come and work for us. As well as in our wastewater pollution or our water pollution control division, which is wastewater. We've had a lot of, we had a position that was open for over a year. We just could not find anyone who wanted to come in and who wanted to fill it and who met our qualifications. So we finally got that position filled. So we are very excited about that, but we just have a lot of inexperience on our team right now. So looking at this year, the annual street maintenance program, we put that on hold. We lost about $250,000 from FY 2019-2020 to FY 2020-2021. And we also knew that we wanted to do a pavement condition study so that we could actually have that group come in, drive every single mile of our streets here in Warrensburg, tell us the condition, because just because it looks okay on top doesn't necessarily mean that the sub base is doing what it needs to be doing. So, or that it's not as in good a shape as we want it to be. So we wanted to do this pavement condition survey to make sure that we were starting to invest our money with data, having that data to back up where we were putting our money and how we are investing in our street system. So we went ahead and put kind of our typical street maintenance program on hold for 2020. So we're still doing our crack sealing, we're still doing potholes, we're still going to be painting the pavement markings on the streets. And we're also going to be resealing the polymer overcoat that we put down last year. So we'll come in and put that additional seal over the top of it to make that last longer. And we're actually going to be sealing some of our city parking lots as well. What this does, as I explained to you all in the previous year, this frees up a lot of opportunity for our curb and sidewalk program. So we have a lot more funding where we can go in, because we don't have to, where we are doing an asphalt overlay, we don't have to go in and fix that curb and then, address the sidewalk because we're already in there. So we're very excited about what we're going to be able to do with the curb and sidewalk program this year. As you all know, we also have our match program that we do with the residents. So we're doing our annual sewer main lining, about 100, it's already completed for this year. We did about 6,000 linear feet. Already talked about the pavement condition survey. They came in earlier in June, and they have already completed that work, and they are already putting together that data. And we are very much looking forward to getting that back and bringing that to you all as a presentation later this year. The other thing that we are going to be doing this year is demolish the Colton Street building and the former East Wastewater Treatment Plant. I just signed this afternoon our environmental testing that we have to do. So we have to go in and we have to look if there's asbestos or if there's lead, or anything that we might need to mitigate before we move forward with demolition on these buildings. We had originally planned to do the West Wastewater Treatment Plant as well, to include that in with this. However, we know we have a stormwater issue and we don't know where it's coming from. We don't know what's going on. So out there, we have a building that has not been occupied since, I don't know, the 80s or late 70s, early 80s. And it was full of water. We just assumed that was just from rainfall over the years. And so we pumped it out. And as soon as we pumped it out, rushing water, filling it back up. It's clean water. It's not sewer. That was the first question, right? When you're out at the wastewater treatment plant. But we do know that it's stormwater. And so we're going to have to, we know that the money that we budgeted for it is not going to be enough to tackle any stormwater engineering that needs to happen out there. So we want to make sure that we're doing that right and making sure that we get that taken care of. So we're doing the environmental study this year, but we're going to postpone the actual demolition to next year. But the one thing I wanted just to mention is that we did have the police shooting range. It has since been decommissioned, but it has been out there. And so one of the things that we want to make sure that we are taking care of appropriately is if there's any lead out there. We also renewed our MS4 permit. We upgraded the UV equipment at the East Wastewater Treatment Plant. So one of the things that always gets a little confusing is when we're doing our budget conversations, we're like, I thought you guys just did the UV equipment upgrade last year. So you got to remember we have 2 wastewater treatment plants. It's actually unique for a community of our size. However, because of the way Warrensburg is built on the top of the hill, and you guys all know the #1 rule about wastewater. So everything runs downhill. So that's why we have the 2 wastewater treatment plants, and they are built out for us to, and you guys know we did the wastewater capacity study, and we have that, that we're gonna have to start preparing and planning for those upgrades that we have at both of those plants. Barb mentioned that we are trying to implement the GIS and seeing GIS as an asset and getting the GIS department spun up and being able to support other departments who view GIS as an asset. That is absolutely Public Works. So we have our wastewater system. It is in map form or paper map form at this time. It is not in a GIS later. So we have been working with a company and working with GIS and getting that. Also, not only is it where is the manhole, but how deep is the manhole? What is the elevation of the main? And getting all of that so it's more accessible for us to share with developers or people who are interested in working on our wastewater system. We had done a stormwater layer about a few years ago, I think 5 years ago now, with Great River. But as you know, as development occurs and as new projects come into place, like that has already changed over the last 5 years. And so, however, we did not have the ability to change and update our stormwater system as new development plans came in. So we're starting to work with. That's one of the benefits of having our own GIS and having the ability for our own staff people to have GIS on their computers to be able to go in and update that and keep it current. So we were pretty conservative in our budgeting with 2020 and 2021. But one of the new pieces of equipment that we were able to purchase and able to get budgeted for was the paint machine for pavement markings. So the 2 pictures on the left, those are our current paint machine or our old paint machines. So they were about almost 25 years old at this point, and they were originally intended to do parking lots. And you'll notice that one of them is yellow and one of them is white. That is because you can only do one color of paint in each one. So the picture on the left is our new paint machine, and we were very excited to get this. Basically, the person who is operating it stands on the back. It's like a 0-turn mower, and they are able to do white paint and yellow paint as well as put the beads down all at the same time. So this is going to be a huge savings and allow us to be able to knock out a bigger chunk of that pavement marking throughout this season. And just as a reminder, we do all of our own pavement markings, so all of McGuire, all of Young Street, all throughout the community, we do all of that. Lastly, I put this as kind of the crossover between the 2 years for 2020, 2021 and 2022. This is for the, we did the educational campaign for the general obligation bond issuance for bridge and street improvements. And then as well as the raise grant application for the McGuire corridor. You all know we've been working very diligently on that. That deadline is July 12th. I will have an update for you all at our next meeting that I need to get you to. And then we can talk about this McGuire Street summary of improvements as well at that time. So for the next year, of course, we want to get our annual street maintenance program and our curb and sidewalk programs in. We are very excited about being able to use the information that we get from TransMap to be able to do that very smart this year. You've heard, this is a common theme, I hope you have all heard, we've added training and continuing education back into our budget as well. We have a young staff, we have an inexperienced staff, as I shared with you. And so we want to give them the ability. That also shows that we're investing in our people and that, you know, if they're here with us, then we want to make sure that we're reinvesting in them as well. One of the things that we're looking at is landscaping of city maintained flower beds. So we only have one person who is in charge of our building and grounds. So he is in charge of doing all of the HVAC, shoveling all the sidewalks, keeping all that clear, taking care of any plumbing issues that we may have, or if a roof is leaking, or if a window is leaking, or anything like this. And so one of the things that unfortunately falls To the waste side is the landscaping of our city maintained flower beds. So we are asking for a little bit of money in the next budget year to be able to offer some assistance with that. One of the things that we are interested in is looking at how we can do some native plantings, how they can be low maintenance, because we don't have time to be watering them. We don't have time to be going out there and pruning shrubs. We just don't have that time. So we've got to look at something that is going to be a little bit lower maintenance for us for that. Another thing that we're looking at is retrofitting city facilities with LED lighting. If you all will remember in last year, we entered into the Renewables Direct program with Evergy. And so we went in 50%. We are actually realizing a savings from that. And so we are seeing a reimbursement on our energy bill from Evergy because we are participating in that renewable energy program. So we are going to try to set that money aside in a separate fund to use it to reinvest if we can in more other energy efficiency measures and ways to save money by saving energy. Unfortunately, so there's always been a little bit of money set aside in the cemetery to do some asphalt, to do some curb repairs, to do some things. However, it always seems like we just never get around to it. We cut that money in 2020 due to revenue shortfalls that we were anticipating. I don't know if you've had an opportunity to drive out to the cemetery, but it needs some attention, and it's time to finally start putting some money back into that. One of the good things is we actually have a pot of donation money that we can use to do this. So what the real challenge is with the asphalt is that we are not able to get our box down there because those streets are so narrow. It's difficult to get asphalt equipment in through there. So that'll be one of the challenges, but we are trying to make an investment in the cemetery. Another thing that we'll be taking a look at is updating our major street plan. So the last time our major street plan was done, the bypass was slated to go on the west side of town. So now that the bypass is on the east side of town, we need to take a look at our major street plan to make sure that we are still making investments in our roadways that make sense. Another goal for us is identifying dedicated funds for stormwater infrastructure improvements and repairs. This picture is a picture of a sidewalk on Saul. After one of our rain events, the sidewalk collapsed, and that's about a 20-foot deep sinkhole.
Oh, wow.
We cut our emergency stormwater funding last year, so we do not have a dedicated funding source for this. So fortunately, sent an email to Marcella, and she felt like we would be able to cover it with our reserves because this obviously has to be taken care of. But that's why it's so important for us to identify a dedicated funding source for stormwater infrastructure improvements and repairs. And so you will be hearing us talk a lot more about that next year. Again, we'll do our annual sewer mainlining program because we are, still trying to chip away at that. We'll demolish the west wastewater treatment plant. The big thing that we'll be looking at for the wastewater treatment plants is upgrading the SCADA components. So that's about a $1.2 million project. We will probably split that over next year as well as the year following that. But it is crucial that we get that SCADA component upgrade in because we have to do that before we will be able to do the upgrades that are necessary to make sure we're meeting our capacity that we need to be at for the next 20 years. So, are there any questions about the public works budget? We do have food. Oh, sorry.
I just want to make sure that staff understands how appreciative we are for all the time. It takes a lot of time to put this together and put this much information. So I don't want to miss that in our hurry to break.
Sure, thank you. We appreciate it. It is great to have the opportunity to share with you guys. Sometimes we get down in the weeds and we're like, well, we're living it every single day. So it's nice to have the opportunity to tell you guys what we did last year, what we're doing. So, thank you. We do have dinner. Sounds good. Everyone break for a minute. And we can reconvene.
Yeah. You'll be a lot, I think.
So Gracie Barnhart, will you come here, please?
I've always been curious. I've noticed that it seems like the majority of
Come on up, Gracie.
law offices are Harris, Summer, and whatever, right? Right.
All right. So Gracie, you're gonna be honorary mayor for a moment. You're gonna gavel the meeting into session. You hit the gavel there. All right. Call city council into session. Thank you very much.
She's way better than you, by the way.
I would imagine that most people are better than me, so.
That's what we love about you, humility.
Yep. He's come. All right, 7 o'clock, so we'll call the meeting to order, please, and do roll call.
Brooks.
Here.
Kushner,
There.
Lund,
Here.
Bentley.
Here.
Holmberg.
Here. All right, approval of city council meetings. We've got a 3-1 city council minutes study session on 5/24. Looking for approval.
Move to approve.
Brooks,
Yes.
Kushner,
Yeah.
Lund,
Yes.
Bentley,
Yes.
Holmberg.
Yes. All right, item 3-2, city council minutes, 5/24, looking for approval of the actual city council meeting.
Move to approve.
Brooks,
Yes.
Kushner,
Yes.
Lund,
Yes.
Bentley,
Yes.
Holmberg.
Yes. All right, looking for a motion to adopt the agenda.
Move to adopt.
Brooks,
Yes.
Kushner,
Yes.
Lund,
Yes.
Bentley,
Yes.
Holmberg.
Yes. Okay, bear with me, please. I'm using my actual phone here, so can I steal this from you? All right. So item number 5, public hearing, 5-1, a public hearing on an ordinance rezoning a portion of Cahill subdivision from general business to R1 and R4. Presented by Barb Carroll, please.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. A couple months ago, you had a plat in front of you for the 6th phase of Cahill, and it's in the northeast corner of the overall subdivision. Goes along Larson Avenue and on the north side of the lake. At the time, we discussed a rezoning request would be coming forward for that, some of that land. Originally, when this project was first conceptualized and started out with a preliminary plat, it predated the construction of the Highway 13 bypass. And so it was a little uncertain how that layout would be at that time. And the original developers included 2 general business lots, very large lots on the front side of the project between Larson Avenue and HH, the county road HH. And then on tap HH is the land that the Brady family owns, that's zone general business between HH and the Highway 13 itself. So the land we're talking about this evening is that lot of general business that's on the north side of Veterans Drive between Larson and HH. And a portion of it has been requested to be rezoned to single family, consistent with the Cahill Phase 6 plat. And then the remainder of it would be requested to be rezoned to R4, medium density multifamily residence district. That will include one of the lots in that subdivision phase that they would like to build a duplex in and use it at least initially as a model home and lease up, et cetera. The rest of it, some of that is a mitigation area, floodplain mitigation area, no, a wetlands mitigation area, and the rest of it is potentially developable land, but it will be rezoned from general business to R4 and developed in residential. Staff has recommended approval of the request. The Planning and Zoning Commission considered this request at their meeting last week and recommended approval as well. Staff has not had any contact from anybody in the public on it. There was none at the commission meeting, and we haven't had any since before or since it either. Be happy to answer any questions, and I know the developer is here as well if you have questions.
Close that public hearing, and then 5.2. We've got a public hearing on an ordinance approving a conditional use permit at 108 West Pine Street. For you again, Barb.
I'm back. This is a request at 108 West Pine Street, and the applicants are here as well. If you have questions of them when I get done. We have added an ordinance to the city's ordinances in the last year to allow this type of use. The use category created was for a weapons range, shooting range, or archery range. And in this case, the request is specifically for an axe throwing range. So it's fall under that weapons range, piece of the land use 6.150. The applicant has requested, so it's in the central business district, because that use encompasses other things such as firearm type range, archery range. It's a conditional use permit in the central business district. In this case, it's fully enclosed building. They're not making any changes to the footprint of the building, and they've asked just for the axe throwing. The building, there are floor plans included in your packet. They're looking at 10 throwing lanes on the first floor with a bar and some seating areas. The mezzanine level will be seating area and some other things provided there. And then the basement level would be restricted to staff only, no entrance from the public. Staff did get one comment from the public on this after notices went out. And that was from Jim Duncan at 1103 North Holden Street, called to see for just general information about the request and ask if the property had sold. In this case, staff has recommended approval, and the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval as well. Normally you would see a site plan with conditional use permits, and in this case, we have noted in the ordinance that would be waived because there are no changes to the footprint of the building. It doesn't change the relationship of the building to the street, to the property lines, to the setbacks. There are not if those types of impacts that would require site plan. And then we've added a statement in the ordinance consistent with actions of the Planning Commission to restrict it to just a axe throwing, that there would not be any firearm or archery range involved in the use. So we would be happy to answer any questions. And, if you have questions about the operation, here as well.
Can we use javelins?
No, axes.
That's right.
Well, if there are no questions, we'll close that public hearing and go on to item number 6. First reading only ordinance. The first reading of an ordinance rezoning land located north of Veterans Road and east of Larson Avenue from general business district to R1 single family resident district and R4 medium density multifamily residence district. Barb, that's you.
This is the hearing we just had. We would recommend approval. If you have any questions, we can take those.
Okay, no questions. First reading of an ordinance, or item 6.2, I'm sorry. First reading of an ordinance authorizing execute pre-annexation agreement with Matthew Swope. An ordinance authorizing the city manager and city clerk to execute a pre-annexation agreement with Matthew Swope for property located at 95 Southwest 100 Road in Johnson County, Missouri. Presented by interim city manager Danielle Doolin.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. This is a pre-annexation agreement with a property owner located at 95 Southwest 100 Road in Johnson County, Missouri. You will see here on the map that we presented the properties that are along Hale, what is that? That intersection there. Those houses that are along the north border there, and the houses that are along the east side of the street, but to the west of the red rectangle. All of those properties are already connected to city sewer, even though they are not located within city limits. When that was contemplated and that was agreed upon, they were required to sign pre-annexation agreements, stating that if the city were to ever expand its boundaries and city limits that direction, that they would not protest annexation. This property owner reached out to the city and requested to be able to tap into our main. It goes directly behind the property there with the red rectangle. One of the requirements to do that is to again sign a pre-annexation agreement that he would not protest if the city does decide to expand its city limits. The other additional thing that is here, typically if you are within city limits, your charge to tap the city main is $250. However, if you are outside the city limits, your charge is $1,000. So this property owner has agreed to sign the pre-annexation agreement as well as pay the $1,000 fee associated with tapping the city sewer. Of course, he would continue to pay the monthly fee as well. There are any questions?
No questions. We'll go on item 6.3. First reading of ordinance authorizing purchase of compressor from Conrad Fire Equipment. So this is a first reading of an ordinance authorizing the interim city manager and interim fire chief to purchase a WFD 21 compressor and cylinder management system from Conrad Fire Equipment in the amount of $70,000 and some change. So Marcel, it looks like you're going to present.
Yes, and in Doyle's absence, and he'll be here next meeting to answer any further questions that I can answer. So just so you know, the current compressor at Fire Station 2 is the Bauer compressor that was built in 1994. He's provided some pictures in the staff report for you guys to look at and review that. I know Chairman Kushner would be available to answer any questions. It's been around forever and ever as far as that compressor is concerned. But the main thing is that the city of Warrensburg applied for the grant through FEMA for $70,000. And so this is a matching grant. And so we have been awarded that $70,000 max, so it's a total cost of $70,000. And so FEMA would give us approximately $63,000 of that, and we would have to spend the other $6,000. Chief Doyle has asked if we can spend the extra $89, and we'll have to have permission from FEMA to do some of the additional equipment that he's asked for. If we don't have the permission from them, then that will reduce the cost down on this purchase. So he outlines the total cost to be $70,089.47. So that $89.47 is the questionable piece if FEMA is not agreeable to allow us to include some of the additional pieces. But we were trying to spend as much of that money that was afforded to us as we possibly could. And they would require us to pay that additional $89, but we still have to run through that request for permission. And he had reached out to them before he left. And so hopefully we'll have an answer when he returns. So for second reading, we'll know exactly. So there may be some modifications to this, but this piece would be paid for primarily with the grant money and the 10% matching going forward. It's not in the budget as far as the expense is concerned. We knew we had been awarded the grant money, so we included it in the revenue side. So that's our mistake, and so there will be a final budget amendment as we finish out 21 that will include this particular piece as well in that expenditure line item. And like I said, Chief will be here to answer any further questions at next meeting for second reading. Or if you have questions that you want me to reach out to him before that meeting, then let me know.
I'm good. I know, was it Kushner, she said had been here forever, the compressor. But,
I made that
This was
comment.
this is the third time that we tried to get this grant, and
yeah, I've heard about this before. So thank you, Marcella, for presenting it. All right, item number 7, first and second reading ordinance. A first, second reading of an ordinance approving a conditional use permit at 108 West Pine Street. An ordinance approving a conditional use permit for land use 6.150, specifically an axe throwing business in the central business district at 108 Pine in the city of Warrensburg, Missouri. Barb?
Do you have any additional questions?
Move to approve? Or move to second reading by title, all right?
Okay, Brooks,
Yes.
Kushner,
Yes.
Lund,
Yes.
Bentley,
Yes.
Holmberg.
Yes.
This is for adoption or rejection. Yep. I was gonna read it. An ordinance approving a conditional use permit for land use 6.150, specifically an axe throwing business in the central business district at 108 West Pine Street in the city of Warrensburg, Missouri. For adoption or rejection, Brooks,
Yes.
Kushner,
Yes.
Lund,
Yes.
Bentley,
Yes.
Holmberg.
Yes. Okay, item number 8, other business. Apparent, anything else? Okay. Number 9, appearance of the council not listed on the agenda. Come forward, Phil, please state your name and address or tell us what's up. Welcome.
Good evening. I won't take too much of your time, but I want to throw something out for you to think about, and I will answer questions if you have them. I'm coming to the city council to see if there's some way that some of the deer that are devastating my property can be removed. I don't know, sometimes it's called cold. This is the worst year ever on my property. They have devastated many of my plants. I was reminded today, I went to a friend's house and they have some coneflowers that are this tall, and mine are this tall with no flowers. They've just taken them all. And they've also taken all of a number of other plants that they normally don't do. The damage has happened before, but I think it's just a matter of numbers, so many of them now. And I can find deer prints all over my property, clear up to the house, and I'll take things right up to the house. And as you know, they have no predators here in this city, and there's no way really that people can control them other than culling them some way. And I don't know exactly how other cities have done it, but I'll probably have no very few butterflies or bees or some other insects in the fall that I normally have, just because there's nothing there for them to eat and feed on, and the birds the same way. So I'm asking, consider my property because it's affecting me, but I'm guessing there are other citizens that have the same concern on their property, as well as public park and rec in some of the forested areas. I know that deer can devastate the balance of nature through what they're doing as far as eating other plants that other animals need to survive on. So that's why I'm here. Like I said, I'll answer any questions if you have some questions, but I see you have a big agenda and you worked before and you're working after, so that's why I'm here.
How does the city do this? Because I agree with them. If you get an overpopulation of one type of something and no predation, then it starts offsetting other things, but.
A couple of years ago, we had discussed, this was before you had signed on, urban hunting season or something to that up. And we had discussed briefly about going and doing some research, and then COVID happened and the world turned upside down, which seems to be the recurring theme. But that was one solution we had discussed when I first got on the council.
That was gonna be my suggestion, is why don't you let us take this on, let us do a little bit of research. Let's see if we can In addition to the devastation to the yards, we know that this is going to be a huge year for ticks. I've been reading about that, and with that, with the diseases that are associated with that. So why don't you let us take this back, do a little bit of research on it, and present something to you all at a later meeting date.
And the deer is one, but also I've noticed like during the daylight even, raccoons, like using the sewers to get around and, getting fairly brazen. Is there any way for us to control the raccoon population? Because we're just kind of a smorgasbord here for them. And they can be fairly destructive as well.
We'll take that one. When we look at this one, we'll look at raccoons as well.
What's your location? Where are you located? Your residence, where's your residence located?
601 Renway.
Oh.
Anybody that wants to come by and look and see what's left of it, no.
Oh, I
And
didn't-
there's some things left. Be glad to have people come by.
I don't have any flowers left. They've eaten every single one that I have.
I have actually done a little bit of research, but I'm not going to share it here. But I'd be glad to talk about what I found out sometime.
I've had a couple other people approach me in the last year about it too, that live over in your neighborhood, Doug, that they've gotten thicker and thicker over the last few years.
And I know the university was looking at something as well, and so Beth and I have had a conversation about it. So I might reach out to her as an additional resource as well. That's correct.
At one time, the conservation department was willing to support it due to the population, but I don't know what it's like now for them.
And I know about where you live, and I know there's a road there called Deer Run.
Not too far from there.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, they
And I
need to
know
keep running.
They've done construction there. They've built a couple of houses. And so I think that's probably where a lot of them were their habitat, and now they have to,
That could
they've been
be.
displaced, so.
I should have been suspicious this spring when I went back to the back of my property and there was this beaten trail along the
Yeah.
backside of it that I'd been there before. But
Yeah, I don't live too far from there, and I've had them in my front yard, so.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so.
Thank you very much for coming and presenting to, so staff will look at it. Anybody else? Okay. Miscellaneous matters from the mayor and or city council.
If they go Dylan Dest.
All right. Mayoral appointments, we don't have any tonight. Item number 12, city manager report.
This evening, we have Mason Boyd, who is our management fellow. He has been working on a proposal for you all for dockless scooters. And then I also have an update for you regarding the grant application, the raised grant application. But I will let Mason.
All right, good evening, Mayor and Council. It's been a long day, so I'll try to keep this as concise as you all want it to be. Feel free to ask me questions throughout or at the end. But as Danielle mentioned, I have been working for the past 2 or 3 months on the idea of dockless electric scooters in the city of Warrensburg. So here tonight, I'm just going to present some of the facts and some of the ideas and seek guidance on how much further you all want me to continue to pursue this, or if you want this project to end tonight where it started. So just to get started, what are electric scooters? I'm sure you've seen these in Kansas City or any other city across the United States that kind of popped up over the past 2 or 3 years. But the first bullet point is just a common definition of what electric scooters are. And then they are, you might have heard them referred to as e-scooters, electric scooters, motorized scooters. So just kind of some definitions and some language to go ahead and get started. But the idea is that they're meant to be stood on and they're meant to be rode no faster than 20 miles per hour. Typically on city streets, though some cities do authorize them on sidewalks. So in Warrensburg, there's sort of a history with toy vehicles. And so kind of the status quo of where we're at right now. In 2005, there was a pocket bike craze that kind of erupted within the city, where this ordinance that I have outlined for you was passed and authorized, and it was to prevent individuals from operating these or other motorized vehicles on public property, on streets, on sidewalks. The main issue with that was a safety concern. As they sit so low to the ground, as you can see in that image, they were hard to see for cars and they were hard to operate in a safe manner with the different forms of transportation within the city. So just kind of where we're at right now is electric scooters would be banned based on that ordinance as well. They would be considered other motorized vehicles or other motorized devices. So at the moment, electric scooters are banned or for private citizens, for public companies, whoever. They're not allowed on city streets at the moment. So as we move forward with the context of the current issue at hand, is we were approached by Bird Rides Inc., which is one of the major companies that operate electric scooters across the United States, probably 5 or 6 months ago with the previous administration and previous mayor, and then due to some transitions the project kind of died, and it has been reintroduced to Danielle and I. And so they reached out to us probably in April, and we started following this project a little bit further with them as they've started this new operating model, this new business model with a fleet manager. And so what they are proposing to us in Warrensburg is a fleet of 50 scooters to start out, which would be managed by this fleet manager, who would be a local Warrensburg resident, who is responsible for the maintenance, the safety, the laws and the compliance with the regulations that we choose to set forth. So if we were to move forward with this proposal, this is how it would operate. We would have one point of contact, who would be a Warrensburg resident, working in between Bird and the city of Warrensburg. But there's more, I'll talk more about kind of what the steps forward after this are. It's just a little bit of context to why we're looking at it right now. So just kind of talking about the actual benefits and consequences of electric scooters, and this is really where the guidance from council is most wanted, because you all are being asked to weigh the pros and cons and tell staff how you want to handle that moving forward. So some of the potential benefits, as you see, are eco-friendly transportation. Sorry, the text on the slide has gotten a little messed up, but that's supposed to say transportation. So these electric scooters are much more eco-friendly. They are not gas powered, and so they also just move more efficiently, and because they weigh less and they put more of the energy in towards going forward for the actual individual versus whatever is going on in the car. I'm not an engineer, but it's a lot less efficient in a car. So the idea is that this is going to be good for last mile transportation, which is the idea that if an individual were to get off at the Amtrak station, or the individual had a ride from point A to point B, they needed to get to point C after that, they could take these scooters and just make it's a more convenient, it's a different type of transportation opportunity for individuals. And there's less noise and air pollution because of these. And so they just provide another opportunity for Warrensburg residents to get around the town. They're convenient and easy to use, whether they're a private individual's electric scooter, which takes very little upkeep and very little maintenance responsibilities, or if it's the Bird scooters that have approached us. It takes a few minutes to get registered on their app, and then you just go from there. So there's no startup for the city. There's no big inconvenience in that regard. Additionally, this would provide increased connectivity between UCM downtown and the rest of the city. This is consistent with one of the strategic plan points to provide connectivity in different forms between these important entities. And so that alignment with strategic plan is of intense consideration as we move forward in this discussion with Bird. And lastly, it's just it's fun. I don't know if you all have ridden these electric scooters, but they're fun to just ride around town, feel the nice breeze. They're a safer motorcycle for 18 to 25-year-olds. They're very popular, and they're just fun for some people. So now that we've talked about the potential benefits, it's necessary to talk about some of the potential concerns. The first concern is safety. Across the United States, there have been documented cases of safety issues from accidents and anything like that, but there is no reasonable there's no heightened risk to these bikes or these scooters compared to a bicycle or compared to a motor vehicle in and of itself. So there's always a safety element. There's always a danger in anything that you operate. Cars are one of the most dangerous things that you can operate as an individual. So that is also the case with electric scooters. There is that concern that needs to be weighed. Second is the definition if we were to move forward with this, that we'd have to consider to avoid unintended consequences. Really, one of the big discussion points for tonight will be what kind of things do we want operating on Warrensburg streets? If we define this too tightly, this could prevent some other vehicles and devices that we actually do want to be on the streets. If we define this too broadly, then pocket bikes could make a comeback, or anything else could kind of be operated on these streets and sidewalks. And we've opened up a can of worms that we did not account for. The third potential concern is the use of public property for private enterprise profit. And so this is an element that Doug Harris brought up, and he can elaborate more on if we need to, but there's a Missouri constitutional element where public property cannot be used for private profit without some sort of franchise use agreement. So we would have to work out some contract or some agreement with Bird if we were going to pursue that option. We'd have to make sure that we are recouping the costs that we are incurring as a part of this, so that Bird is not using our right of way to profit without any expense. Fourth is the ADA or potential abandonment issue on sidewalks. As you've probably seen, if you've seen these throughout other cities, they can be just strewn about on sidewalks, in the middle of the road, in trees, wherever. This is one thing that Bird has been extra concerned about lately, and they've been working on different technologies to allow cities to control that better. And with the new fleet manager model, the incentive is for the manager to maintain these and to make sure that they're in the right place. And we as the city would have the ability to cancel their contract or to punish them appropriately if they violate this ADA or abandonment on sidewalks, if we were to build that into a contract. So if we are to move forward with that, that is a concern that we would have to consider. And finally, liability and sovereign immunity. Again, this is an element that Doug would have to elaborate on if you want more detail. But essentially, if the city is responsible for negligence or injury, we are potentially at risk of losing our sovereign immunity, and we could be sued, which is something we want to avoid. And we would have to work out with insurance and indemnification and all the legal stuff that I'm not able to talk about. We'd have to consider that as we move forward, if that was what the council decided was the will. So just for some context and some greater reference, e-scooters are legal in the cities that you see on your left in Missouri, and on the right, just that are more comparable cities to the city of Warrensburg. Kansas City, St. Louis, and Columbia have had them off and on for the past 2 or 3 years, with mixed success at the beginning, but they have had much more consistent and much more moderate usage and success since then, since they've worked out some of the kinks, as this was a recent fad. City staff, including myself and some others, have talked to some representatives in these cities and have kind of learned some of the best practices and some of their what they've learned and what they've learned not to do and how to handle it best. So if we will continue to work with them if this is something we choose to pursue. And then Pittsburgh, Kansas has a university, so we talked to them to see how they will operate with that. Morehead, Kentucky also has a university. Bartlesville and Weatherford, Oklahoma. Those are just cities that are comparable population to us, another university like us, and they have all had all have had overall success with the program, with different levels of challenges that they've had to overcome. And so lastly, as I mentioned, what staff is looking for tonight is guidance from the council regarding 2 main issues. There are really 3 possible routes that we could take this going forward. The first we need to consider is, are electric scooters allowed generally? The first option that we can do, that the council can do, is to amend the ordinances to allow electric scooters on the city streets without allowing Bird and Lyft or Spin or any of these other organizations to operate in the city of Warrensburg. If we were to amend the ordinances, a private citizen would then be able to operate their own electric scooter as a mode of transportation without having the stocklessness that is also a consideration right now. The second question is, are we going to allow dockless electric scooters to operate in Warrensburg? This is the Bird Rights Inc. Question that I've kind of talked around. If we are to move forward with allowing electric scooters in Warrensburg, the next question would be, would we go into try to enter a contract with Bird to allow the fleet of 50 scooters that we've discussed tonight with the fleet manager and whether this is something we want to consider with another company as well, or instead of, or how we want to handle that. Or the third option is stick with the status quo and don't change the ordinance and continue to ban electric scooters on city streets. So really what staff is looking for tonight is guidance from the council on which of these three paths you want to pursue. If you would like any other research or any questions, I'm happy to answer. But that's kind of the facts of where we're at right now in this situation.
You said you reached out to those other comparable
Yeah.
size
Uh-huh.
and you've gotten feedback from them, so you'd be able to draft like a final.
Yeah.
This is what their challenges were. This is how we would combat it.
Right.
Okay.
So
I would like-
Kirksville just passed theirs in May. So they're kind of the freshest example. So they don't have necessarily the kinks worked out yet, but I've reached out to Pittsburgh, Kansas, who've had it since last November. Kansas City, I've reached out to, I've gotten good feedback from them, so.
And did they provide you with what their ordinance, how their ordinance read
Yeah.
specifically for, or do they allow the?
Yeah, so I received contracts where it talks about insurance and what the franchise payment would be. I received sample ordinances of how they define electric scooters, how they handle the operation of these organizations. I think, and I've also received sort of like their public communications elements as well to deal with safety. And then I've also talked with Bird extensively, and they have different examples from other cities across the country that I haven't. So.
And sorry, I
Yeah.
didn't mean to take over, but do they allow them to only be ridden in certain areas of the city, or is it just free
Yeah, so that
reign of the whole city, or?
the city would have the opportunity to define that. Bird has a new geofencing technology where you can set speed limits and different ride zones where you ride outside of the authorized zone, the machine essentially shuts down. You go to 1 mile an hour or so. And but so that is something that we would be able to control and we would be able to discuss with Bird if we were going to pursue that any further.
Okay.
I think my first thoughts are, I think it's kind of a neat idea. I'd like to see some interest and innovation in Warrensburg, and I never would have thought of it. My son's gonna love it, so.
It's been brought up before. What's the big liability, Doug?
So if you're entering into an agreement with a private company like this, you have sovereign immunity except with respect to dangerous conditions of property. So the first consideration is to the extent you're in an agreement with them to use your public right of way, have you participated in conditions that are created as a result of the operation of this system? That's within sovereign immunity. To the extent that the city is gaining money from contract, there's questions as to whether or not there is governmental immunity in that circumstance. And so that's why I indicated, I think it would be very important to look into the city's insurance coverages and this is all still from a legal standpoint, very new. There's been some litigation concerning the operation of these, but we will see more as this footprint expands. And my concern is that I always would prefer if the city is not a test case for one of those, that we see how that develops before those things take place, because there's still a lot of unknowns. So I think there's some exposure, even if we have sovereign immunity. I think there's much greater exposure if a court were to determine that this is a business function, what we refer to in the law as a proprietary activity instead of a governmental function. So there's just some questions that we don't have answers to right now.
Does that apply to, because he gave us an option of private citizens?
If private citizens operations, no, because then the city's street is being used for public travel, which is what it's there for.
So we could allow part of this, but not necessarily all of it, and you're not as concerned on the private citizen.
Right, because there's not this fleet that is just intended to be left out in the public right of way at all times. Okay.
Is that because we're pretty much providing them a space to house those, or?
Correct.
So if they were to purchase land and then put a fleet there, would that absolve us from that liability?
There would be less concerns. I don't know that I've ever seen their operations handled in that fashion where there's a depot. But that would eliminate part of it.
And that might be something you ask those other cities, or if they've already, I don't know if they provided you with that information.
Well, so I know that Berg would not be interested in purchasing land. We've kind of floated, I've kind of floated that idea about specific zones of parking, and they're kind of reluctant on that, but they will, I mean, you have the ability to authorize specific zones where you can park. And I think that's about as far as Berg would be interested in going.
Okay.
But I don't think we're saying that we would own the land. I think we would be saying, hey, if you want to do this, you would have to purchase a lot and designate as a terminal. Is that right? Or is that?
Yeah,
I think that's the question that he's asking. I don't know if the thinking behind this type of a system really functions with the centralized.
Because these things are more of you walk by, you click on it, you pay, you go and drop it off wherever you want to. It's not meant to.
Yeah.
I've seen them in several towns and they're either loved or hated.
I would be open to explore further.
Okay.
Sounds like you have your direction.
Yeah, thank you.
All righty, ma'am.
Randy is getting that pulled up. I did want to give you guys, this came in today. So I wanted to have an opportunity to share it with you. This is the draft letter of support and the scope of work that HDR has put together for us to go to our community partners regarding the RAISE grant. In your packet, you received a memo from HDR following up on the presentation that they did a few weeks ago with the RAISE grant. If you all will remember, one of the things that was still outstanding was if we still needed to, how far we needed to extend the 5 lanes, if we needed to go to North Street or if we needed to go to Gay Street or maybe even possibly further. HDR's final recommendation on that is to extend 5 lanes all the way from Young to Gay, looking at Gay as being that real east to west arterial in our community, as well as a gateway to our other business district of downtown. So that is their final recommendation. They did the final scope of work. They put together this, I think this graphic is great and tells a lot in a very small space there. That's how you summarize $45 million. We are, so like I said, we are ready to, with their recommendation of the 5 lanes through to Gay Street, we are ready to start asking for letters of support from our community partners. I know there was conversation if we wanted to extend 5 lanes even past Gay Street. They did look at the data on that, and it would be about $1 million to do that. Obviously, the cost of that would be more expensive if we postponed it. However, they have determined that 3 lanes of traffic will serve us through 2045 once we get past Gay Street. So that is not their recommendation at this time. I did have an opportunity to talk to Mr. Shipley from MoDOT today. Mr. Shipley has a copy of the letter that you have in front of you, as well as the project scope of work. He indicated to me that he will be meeting with the new district engineer, Kansas City. He anticipates that they will be willing to support this. However, they are not going to assign a dollar amount to it this time. he said, once he feels that there might be more of a chance of them committing financial support to us once we've actually received the grant, then they might chip in. I shared with Mr. Shipley that HDR, a point of competitiveness, something that makes us more competitive is being able to demonstrate that we have other community partners. One of those that are willing to financially partner with us on this. And I did not get much of a reaction from him on that. So it is what it is. And it does not look like we will be able to get MoDOT to put their signature to that $1 million commitment at this time. So.
Question?
So we will start sending these out, some of the, we will send them to all of our representatives at the federal, state level, as well as our community partners such as JCEDC, the school district, UCM, Main Street, the Chamber of Commerce. So we will really be, reaching out, contacting lots of folks, because the more letters of support that we can show. So we're excited about it. HDR is still feeling very confident. One of the good pieces of information that I did get out of Rich today was that MoDOT is not applying for any raise grants. So not Kansas City, they're not asking for any kind of rural, they don't have any other rural projects that are in the queue. So we had heard that from HDR, but it was nice to get it confirmed from MoDOT that they aren't going for anything. So, and he had not heard of any other city that would be going for it in Missouri either. So.
Well, that sounds exciting.
I know, we'll keep trucking. All right, thank you all. And again, as these, we keep, again, the deadline is July 12th. So if you guys get questions from folks in the community, if something pops up in your mind and you want us to answer, please don't hesitate to reach out with any questions on that.
I think the inverse is also true. If we need to help reach out to anybody, legislative wise or others, just let us know, please. Because I know staff's doing an awful lot of work and it's a fast deadline. Item number 13, Director of Finance report.
Lots of information there. Sales tax money is looking promising. So I'm really encouraged with that, even from my law enforcement pieces that we get from the county. So that those monies continue to come in. With the budget amendment, they're almost right at budget.
Very good, thank you. Any other questions for finance? Okay, it looks like we need a closed session. All right. So vote to close part of this meeting pursuant to section 610.
Oh, sorry, it does not look like we will need the closed session.
Okay. All right, then, if things good, adjourn the meeting.
Oh.